Honourable Member care to move that the House takes note of miscellaneous business?
I so move.
The Honourable Nathan Guy.
Yes, well, Mr Speaker, what a week it's been for the primary sector. Just today, Stats New Zealand are out there saying fruit exports are up 51% over the last 12 months. Meat exports are up 24%. And also beef leading the charge up 40%. Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that fantastic that the New Zealand primary sector is helping underpin economic growth in this country? Of course, last week and the week before that, we had Labor out there saying it's a crisis in the primary sector, that we should be moving to Plan B, that we're not doing enough to help the dairy industry. And we had the Green Party over there confused. They were really confused because they were saying, James Shaw was saying that we should be out there doing more to help dairy farmers. Then, of course, we had Catherine Delahunty, who was saying we should be having a moratorium on dairy farming. We should stop the expansion of dairy farming. Then we had Stefan Browning up the back there, Mr Speaker, who was talking about we're not doing enough to support organic dairy farming. So I suggest they get together in a bit of a huddle up there in Bowen and gather around Mr Browning's vegetable patch and get their lines correct. But let's focus on one thing. It is right to raise in the House this afternoon that it's a pretty tough time for the dairy industry. But we've been through this before. The average price from 02 to 06 was $4.14. And of course, then when Labor was on the Treasury benches on this side, we didn't hear anything from them, a whisper from them. But of course now it's a crisis. Well, of course it's not a crisis because our dairy farmers have been there before. We realise on this side of the House it is tough for our dairy farmers. But this is a worldwide issue. More milk in the world, more milk being produced and exported from the US. Of course, the Russian sanctions, meaning that European Union products are looking for a new home into some of our more traditional markets. And of course, China slowed down and a little bit of stockpiling of product. But the positive was last week the GDT increasing by 14 to 15%. And of course, our farmers who are out there doing the hard work at the moment, in the mud, collecting their calves, producing a fantastic product. They're still working out what the definition of work is. You're right, Mr Joyce. They'll need to go and cut and paste a few other reports from around the world on that one. We realise what work's all about. Our dairy farmers realise what work's all about, and we back them. What's also important is our horticulture industry is growing fantastically. Let's think about kiwi fruit. Grown on the back of PSA, which nearly crippled them. Now their exports are about $1 billion. Think about the wine industry, $1.42 billion of exports. Absolutely fantastic. We shouldn't forget forestry as well. Pretty tough with them with the China situation at the moment, but some bright lights on the horizon for them to export into the US. And of course, we shouldn't forget about the boom in housing in Auckland and also in Canterbury as well. So we are doing a huge amount to support and promote our primary sector. This was handed to me by Ann Tolley today. Look at this in her local paper. Gisborne economy looks up. And the second line, beef prices drive improved income forecast. Beef prices in Gisborne on the East Coast, underpinning that economy, not acknowledged by those on the other side of the House. It's all about a crisis. It's all about a crisis and a confused message from the Green Party, who just can't work it out. And then we think about what those on the other side of the House want to do to the primary sector. They want to bring in an irrigation tax. They don't support the Primary Growth Partnership. We hear that every day from Damien O'Connor. What they also want to do is bring in biological emissions into the ETS, which means animal emissions quicker into the ETS than anyone else would around the world. They don't support the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Labor can't work it out at the moment, whether they do, whether they don't. And of course, we know on this side of the House that would mean a huge amount to the primary sector and regional economies of New Zealand. On this side of the House, we back the primary sector. Just in the last couple of weeks, we opened the Central Plains Irrigation Scheme, a fantastic initiative, about $1 billion of stimulus into Canterbury. that side of the House, they don't support water storage projects. We will do what we can to support regional economies and support our primary sector.